The bells didn't ring. They counted. 11 slow chimes rolled through St. Bridget's Cathedral, each one sinking into Lila Ashford's ribs like a thumb pressing on a bruise. She stood in the shadow of the last pew, veil pinned too tight, bouquet clenched too hard. White lilies, wrong flowers. They smelled like hospital hallways and funeral programs. "Lift your chin, sweetheart," the coordinator murmured, smoothing the lace at Lila's shoulders with the calm efficiency of someone who'd watched 100 women walk into vows they weren't ready for. Everyone's looking. That was the problem. The cathedral was full. Cleveland's donors, surgeons, trustees, families whose names were etched into buildings and whispered at charity galas like prayers. People who used to smile at the Ashfords when the Ashfords still owned the kind of home that had staff and a gate and a Christmas party for the entire neighborhood. Now they watched Lila like she was the last heirloom in a bankrupt estate, polished up, paraded out, and sold. If you're new here, subscribe now, because what happened after this wedding wasn't romance. It was leverage, betrayal, and the kind of consequence that makes a man beg for mercy in a room full of marble and silence. The organs surged, the doors opened, and Lila's feet moved as if someone else owned them. Down the aisle, the stained glass bled colored light over the stone floor. Ahead, at the altar, Dr. Grant Calder waited. He was 28, already the youngest attending in his specialty at Calder Medical. Tall, lean, a surgeon's hands folded neatly in front of him like instruments laid out before an incision. His tuxedo fit like it had been tailored to punish anyone who tried to touch him. Dark hair, perfect. Eyes, gray and flat and unreadable. The kind of face that belonged on magazine covers, if the man behind it didn't look like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Behind him, his father stood with an expression that wasn't pride so much as victory. Dr. Victor Calder, 62, builder of a hospital empire. A man who could buy a wing with a phone call and still somehow never get invited into the oldest rooms in the city. He watched Lila approach as if he'd ordered her. When she reached the altar, Grant didn't offer a hand. He didn't smile. He leaned just close enough that only she could hear him. "Let's finish this." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They slid under her skin. Lila kept her expression smooth. She turned her eyes to the stained glass behind the priest instead of the man she was about to be chained to by law and cameras and contracts. Because this wasn't a love story. This was an ICU bill with a dress code. "Dearly beloved," the priest began, voice echoing under the cathedral's vaulted ceiling. "We are gathered." Lila heard almost none of it. She watched Grant's jaw tighten every time the priest said, "union." She watched Victor's satisfied smile like a knife laid politely on a linen napkin. When it came time for rings, Grant's touch was brief and careful, like he was handling something breakable that he didn't want to own. The band slipped onto her finger, cold metal settling into place. "You may kiss the bride." Grant kissed her the way a man signs a document. 2 seconds. No warmth, no linger. The smallest nod to public expectation. Applause exploded. Flashes popped. The cathedral swelled with congratulatory noise that felt completely detached from the thing happening to her. And then Lila remembered her mother. Evelyn Ashford, eyes half open under harsh lights. Wires, machines. The slow, stubborn rhythm of a heart refusing to stop, until it did. Lila let the crowd cheer because the crowd didn't know what it had just watched. Outside, rice and petals hit her veil. Grant's hand settled on her elbow, firm, distant, possessive only for the cameras. They moved down the cathedral steps like the most envied couple in Cleveland. In the waiting limousine, the air changed. Grant loosened his tie with sharp fingers, stared out the window, and didn't look at her once. The silence wasn't awkward. It was deliberate. A wall. "The reception is at the Hawthorne." Lila tried, voice quiet. "I think they said 3 hours." 3 hours. Grant cut her off without turning. "We show up, we shake hands, we cut cake, we dance once for the photographers. Then you do whatever you want. I have rounds at 6. It's our wedding day." Now he looked at her. Those gray eyes held something like resentment, and something else that made her stomach twist. "No," he said. "It's the day my father bought your last name." Lila's throat closed. She forced a breath through it. "And I'm the receipt," he added, voice even, almost clinical. Nothing more. The city slid past the tinted windows. Autumn trees, steel bridges, people living lives that weren't signed away in exchange for a mother's heartbeat. Lila turned her face away so the tears could evaporate before he saw them. 3 years earlier, the Ashford house in Shaker Heights had been the kind of place where fundraisers happened casually, where men in suits talked about legacy, while women in pearls corrected each other's French. Lila had grown up running down hallways beneath chandeliers that caught sunlight like shattered ice. At 21, she stood in her father's old study, while strangers labeled furniture with stickers. Waterford, early 20th century, the appraiser muttered, making notes. These will move quickly. The silver, too. Her mother sat in a wingback chair with posture so straight it looked painful. Evelyn's hands were folded neatly in her lap. Only the tremor in her fingers gave her away. Only the shallowness of her breathing. Where is your father? Evelyn asked without turning her head. Lila didn't answer. She didn't have to. The emptiness did. Charles Ashford hadn't vanished. He'd drifted. First to poker nights, then to friends, then to casinos, then to anywhere that let him pretend numbers could fix what he'd broken. By the time the house was being stripped, the family company was already gone, sold piece by piece to cover debts that were never truly covered. Investment accounts emptied, trust funds borrowed, tuition savings erased. Lila found the betting slips in desk drawers with the same numbness she used to find Christmas cards. 4 days before the bank's deadline, Evelyn collapsed on the kitchen floor while Lila was holding an album of photos they were allowed to keep. There was no dramatic farewell. There was the hard, ugly sound of a body hitting tile. At Presbyterian, the doctor's face was kind and tired. Stress damages the heart, he said gently. Poor nutrition, chronic strain. This wasn't one thing. It was years. She needs surgery and long-term care. He slid an estimate across the desk. The numbers didn't look real. Lila's fingers went cold. She asked about payment plans. The doctor nodded, but his eyes betrayed the calculation every hospital makes. Who can pay and who can't? That night, Lila sat beside her mother's bed and watched the monitor's green pulse jump like a small animal trying to escape. And then Victor Calder appeared in the corridor like a man who knew exactly when to arrive. Lila, he said, opening his arms, voice warm, almost intimate. I heard about Evelyn. I came immediately. She remembered him from childhood dinners, her grandfather speaking respectfully of the ambitious young surgeon who'd built something from nothing. But Victor had never been inside their circle. Useful, admired, still not invited into the oldest spaces. It's bad, Lila managed. Victor's expression tightened into practiced concern. You won't worry about money, not for one more second. I'll arrange the best specialists. Private room, everything. Doctor, Calder, I can't. Nonsense. He placed a hand on her shoulder as if blessing her. Your family helped me when I was building. Let me return that kindness. Lila almost believed him. She wanted to. Desperation makes faith easy. 3 weeks later, Evelyn was stable but fragile. Lila worked 3 jobs. Tutor by day, waitress by evening, cleaning offices at night. Sleep became a suggestion. Meals became whatever she could swallow while standing. Victor invited her to lunch at the university club, the kind of place that smelled like old leather and inherited power. You look exhausted, he observed, pouring wine she didn't touch. You can't keep burning yourself down. I can, Lila said. I have to. Victor smiled like a man humoring a child. There's another way. He didn't rush it. He let the silence do the work. Then he spoke carefully, like the offer itself was delicate. My son, he said. Grant. He needs a wife. Lila blinked. A wife? A partner? Victor corrected smoothly. Someone who understands duty, tradition, a name with history. Lila felt the room tilt. You're suggesting me. Victor leaned in, voice low. Your mother's care becomes permanent, fully covered. You stop working yourself into the ground, and the Calders, his smile tightened, gain the gravitas we've been denied. You barely know me. I know your bloodline, he said. And there it was, sharp under the velvet. And I know your situation. Lila's stomach clenched. What does Grant think? Victor's gaze flickered with irritation before warmth returned. My son trusts my judgment. That night, Lila watched her mother sleep beneath fluorescent lights. She listened to the machine help Evelyn breathe. She thought of a state facility. Overworked nurses. Adequate care. The kind of adequate that buries people quietly. Evelyn stirred, eyes opening to slits. Sweetheart, she whispered. You look like you haven't eaten in days. I'm fine, Lila lied softly. Just planning. She didn't tell her mother that Victor Calder had placed a door in front of her with 2 options. Walk through it, or watch Evelyn fade. The wedding was scheduled 6 weeks later, and in a cathedral full of Cleveland's elite, Lila Ashford walked toward a man who didn't want her, because her mother's heart couldn't afford her pride. The penthouse wasn't a home, it was a showpiece. 40 floors above the city, Grant Calder's apartment looked like it had been photographed more than it had been lived in. Marble that reflected the skyline, furniture arranged like exhibits, art that made Lila feel like she was supposed to understand something she didn't. Grant walked in first, keys tossed onto a console with surgical precision. Your room is down the hall, he said without looking back. Housekeeper comes twice a week. Concierge can handle anything else. Lila stopped just inside the foyer with her single suitcase. I thought we might… Dr. Calder, he corrected immediately, voice sharp. We keep this professional, Mrs. Calder. It'll be easier. Professional. As if she'd been hired. As if she could quit. He disappeared into his office. The door shut. The sound echoed like a verdict. Lila stood alone in the silent luxury and realized there wasn't a single object in the place that belonged to her. Not a picture, not a book, not even a spare toothbrush. The first weeks became a pattern of avoidance so clean it could have been scheduled. Grant left before sunrise, returned late. When they passed each other in the kitchen, he spoke with the same polite detachment he used for pharmaceutical reps. Morning, evening, you'll want to be at the gala. The driver is downstairs. Lila spent her days at the hospital, sitting by Evelyn's bed, reading her favorite novels out loud. When her mother slept, Lila watched the monitors like they were the only honest thing in the world. The private wing Victor provided looked like a boutique hotel. Fresh flowers, quiet hallways, nurses with time in their faces. Evelyn's cheeks regained a hint of color. You're losing weight, Evelyn murmured one afternoon, fingers brushing Lila's wrist. Are you eating? Lila smiled. I'm fine. Look at you. You're stronger. Evelyn held her gaze too long, as if she saw through every lie. Her eyes glistened. My darling, what did you do to save me? I did what I had to, Lila said, voice steady. Rest. The lie wasn't the marriage. The lie was that she'd chosen it freely. The first crack came when Grant's phone rang while he was on a brutal hospital shift. Lila was in the kitchen, cleaning up the untouched dinner he'd never come home for. The screen lit. The caller ID showed a name she didn't recognize. She answered out of reflex. Grant. Thank God. A woman's voice, breathless, polished, the kind of confidence that comes from being stared at for a living. I've been trying all day. I know you said you needed space, but I can't stop thinking about what you said. About us. Lila's hand tightened around the phone. This isn't Grant, she said carefully. This is… Mrs. Calder. Silence. Then the woman repeated it slowly, tasting it like something bitter. Mrs. Calder. Yes. A soft laugh, sharp as a broken glass edge. How interesting. Tell my fiancé I called. Lila's stomach dropped. Your fiancé? Oh, the woman sounded almost pleased. He didn't tell you? Lila heard her own pulse. Tell him, the woman continued, voice bright and venomous, that I still have the ring, in case he wants it back to reuse. The line clicked dead. Lila stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, as if sound might return and make this less real. When Grant came home after midnight, she didn't greet him. She waited in the living room with his phone on the coffee table like evidence. He stopped in the doorway, saw it, and his expression went blank in a way that should have been impressive if it wasn't terrifying. She called, Lila said. Grant's jaw flexed. What did she say? She asked for her fiancé. Grant walked to the bar cart, poured whiskey, and didn't offer her any. Former fiancé. How long before we got married? Lila asked. It doesn't matter. How long? He drank half the glass in one swallow. 2 days. 2 days. Lila felt something in her chest go quiet. Not heartbreak, not even shock, just a cold clarity. Thank you, she said softly. That timeline is helpful. Lila, Mrs. Calder, she corrected, returning his word like a blade. Professional, remember? She made it to her room. She shut the door. She pressed her face into the pillow and let the sobs come. Silent, violent, humiliating. Not because she'd expected love, but because he couldn't even grant her the dignity of honesty. The next morning he was gone before she woke. There was coffee in the pot and a note on the counter, written in sharp, controlled handwriting. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. I should have told you. An apology. Or a bandage over a wound that kept splitting. A week later, Lila came home from the hospital and found the bandage ripped off. A woman sat in Grant's living room like she'd been invited. Tall, platinum blonde, flawless in the way money and surgery and genetics collaborate. She wore a dress that looked like it had never been folded. Her smile had teeth. You must be her, the woman said, rising with smooth, predatory grace. Mrs. Calder. Lila didn't move. Who are you? The woman's eyes glittered. Sienna Vale, Grant's mistake. What do you want? Sienna walked slowly, taking in the space, the view, the silence, like she was measuring what Grant had promised and what he'd stolen. To look at the woman who got my ring replaced with a contract, she said. No offense, I know you didn't have a choice. Lila's hands curled into fists at her sides. Grant ended things. 2 days before he married you, Sienna replied lightly. That's not ending things. That's being forced. She held up her hand. A diamond flashed. Not subtle. Not apologetic. He proposed in New York, Sienna said. Then your father-in-law decided he needed your last name more than he needed his son's happiness. Why are you here? Lila repeated, voice flat. Sienna's smile sharpened. Because this arrangement is going to crack. It always does. Grant doesn't do obedience forever, he just delays the explosion. Lila forced her voice steady. So you came to threaten me. I came to offer you something, Sienna said, settling onto the couch like she owned it. When he crawls back, because he will, an annulment will look better than a public divorce. Quiet, clean, and you walk away with enough to keep your mother in that lovely private wing until she's 90. Lila's throat tightened. He won't crawl back. Sienna laughed softly. Darling, you live in the guest room. The words hit their mark because they were true. Sienna leaned closer, voice silky. I'm not your enemy. I'm just the woman he actually wants. I'll wait. Men like him always return to what feels easy. When she stood to leave, she paused at the door. Enjoy the title, Mrs. Calder. Titles are all your father-in-law buys. After the door clicked shut, Lila stayed standing in the same spot for a long time, staring at the city as it turned to dusk. The glass reflected her back at her, veil gone, bouquet gone, eyes too old. A few days later, something shifted. Not kindness, not romance, just movement where there had only been ice. A dinner arrived for two with a note, called back to the hospital. Eat. Grant's medical journals began appearing open on the coffee table. Articles on cardiac recovery, new drug protocols, post-op complications. One night he came home still in scrubs and found her reading in the living room. He stopped in the doorway, exhaustion stamped into every line of him. Your mother's numbers are improving, he said quietly. The rehab plan is working. Your father's team is good, Lila replied. Grant's mouth tightened. Is that what you think this is? Lila looked up. Grant walked in, poured whiskey, then didn't drink it. He held the glass like it was an anchor. My father didn't do this for charity, he said. He did it to buy a room that's been locked to him his whole life. That's not true, Lila said automatically, because admitting it would make her feel even worse about what she'd agreed to. Grant's eyes held hers. Have you seen the guest list for the hospital's fundraising gala next month? Lila blinked. No. He exhaled through his nose, almost bitter laughter. Of course you haven't. You're the point of the guest list. Lila felt her stomach drop again. What do you mean? Old money families, Grant said. Boards, private clubs. The ones who've politely declined his invitations for years. They're coming now, because a woman named Ashford is on my arm. The room went very still. He wouldn't, Lila whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Grant's gaze softened by a fraction, as if he regretted saying it at all. You deserve to know what this marriage is doing, to both of us. Lila swallowed. Do you regret it? She asked before she could stop herself. Grant's eyes flickered. He didn't answer right away. He stared out at the city like it might offer an escape route. Every day, he said finally. The honesty sat between them like a fragile bridge. Not love, not forgiveness, just the first real thing either of them had said since the cathedral. The gala at the Omni was exactly what Victor Calder wanted. Chandeliers, tuxedos, donors with practiced smiles, and a sea of old names suddenly willing to be photographed beside him. Lila moved through it like an actress who knew her marks. Grant's hand rested at her waist for appearances. His smile turned on when needed. His eyes remained guarded. Halfway through cocktails, Grant's phone buzzed. Emergency consult, he murmured. I'll be right back. Lila nodded and watched him step onto the terrace. Then she saw his phone, left on the table beside her clutch. The screen lit again. A message flashed across it, bright and blunt. Missing you. Hate pretending. Another followed. Tuesday was perfect. Same time Thursday? Lila's fingers went numb. Tuesday night. He'd come home near midnight, claiming an emergency case. She'd noticed a different scent on him. Expensive, not antiseptic. Her hand moved before her mind caught up. She scrolled. Weeks of messages, plans, meetings, pictures she refused to open. You shouldn't be holding that. Grant's voice behind her made her flinch. He froze when he saw her face. The ballroom behind them kept laughing. Glasses clinked. Victor Calder shook hands. But the air around Lila felt vacuum-sealed. Emergency consult, Lila said quietly. Grant's skin went pale. We should go home, he said. The ride back was silent. The city passed in black water and streetlights. Lila watched her reflection in the window. Makeup perfect, eyes ruined. When the apartment door closed, the silence snapped. 3 months, Lila said, voice trembling. 3 months, and you never stopped. Grant yanked his bow tie loose, irritation flashing. Our marriage isn't real, you know that. It's real enough to embarrass me, she shot back. Real enough to make me look stupid in front of your father's friends. You're not being embarrassed. I'm your wife. Lila said, the words coming out like they hurt. Legally, publicly, socially. And you're meeting her while I stand beside you, smiling for donors. Grant's control cracked. What did you expect? A fairy tale. I expected respect, Lila said. I expected you to honor what you promised in public, even if you didn't want to promise it. Grant's eyes flashed. I never asked you to sacrifice anything. Yes, you did, she snapped. Every time you treated me like a stranger. Every time you corrected my name like I was staff. Every time you made me feel like I should be grateful for being tolerated. Grant stared at her, anger mixing with something he didn't want to name. And the worst part, Lila continued, voice breaking, is I tried to believe you were trapped too. I tried to feel sympathy for you. But you weren't trapped. You had both. You let me play wife for your father and kept your real life hidden. Grant's face went white. Stop. You're a coward, Lila said, the word landing hard. Too scared to fight him. Too selfish to stop hurting everyone else. Grant's hand slammed on the counter. At least I'm honest about what I want. Lila laughed once, sharp and bitter. Then go. Grant's eyes narrowed. What? Go to her, Lila said, pointing at the door. Stop pretending you're stuck here when you've been running out every chance you get. He grabbed his keys with shaking hands. Fury, guilt, panic. Whatever was inside him was spilling now. Fine, he snapped. At least with her, I don't have to pretend. And what are you pretending here? Lila demanded, voice raw. Grant paused at the door, eyes burning. A husband who gives a damn. The words knocked the air out of her. He stared at her for a beat longer, jaw clenched, then turned and walked out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the glass. Lila sank onto the edge of the couch, breath coming in broken pulls. Outside, Grant's car roared to life. The sound faded into the night. Grant's hands shook on the steering wheel. Her words kept replaying like a bad loop he couldn't shut off. Coward, coward, coward. He pressed the accelerator harder than he should have, city streets blurring. He didn't see the red light until it was too late. A semi-truck was already in the intersection. Metal screamed. Glass burst. The impact spun his BMW like it weighed nothing. In the split second before darkness swallowed him, Grant saw Lila's face, not furious, not triumphant, just exhausted, as if she'd been holding up a collapsing building and finally let it fall. Sirens tore through the night as the wreckage smoked under a street lamp, and the life Dr. Grant Calder had been performing ended in a single violent, final turn. 3 months after the crash, the penthouse didn't feel like a museum anymore. Luxury still clung to every surface. Polished floors, sweeping windows, the city glittering below, but the space had softened. A blanket lived on the couch now, rumpled like someone had actually curled up under it. A stack of paperbacks sat on the coffee table. The faint scent of chamomile drifted through the air, stubborn and domestic. And in the living room, where abstract art used to dominate, stood a hospital bed. Grant hated the bed. He hated the rails, the remote, the way it announced weakness every time someone walked in. He'd spent his life conquering bodies with skill and certainty, and now his own refused to obey like a traitor. Lila moved through the apartment with quiet competence, the kind that didn't ask permission, not because she wanted control, because control was the only thing keeping them both from breaking. She carried a tray of soup across the room, steam curling up like a promise. Lunch, she said, voice soft but final. I can feed myself, Grant muttered. I know, she replied, setting the tray down anyway. Humor me. Grant's jaw tightened. He could have argued. He'd argued the first week. He'd argued until his throat hurt and his pride bled. But something in Lila's expression, steady, tired, unflinching, made him stop. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Lila lifted the spoon. He accepted it. Their fingers brushed as she steadied the bowl. It was brief, accidental, and somehow it quieted the room more than any argument ever had. You're getting better at this, he murmured after a few bites. At nursing you? Lila asked, trying for lightness. No, Grant said, and the word came out softer than he meant. At being near me, without bracing for impact. Lila's smile faltered. You haven't tried to bite my head off in 2 weeks. That helps. A laugh escaped him. A real one. Short. Shocked. Like his body didn't recognize the sound. They both froze, as if laughter was something dangerous in this apartment. Then Grant spoke again, voice rougher. Do you think I was born like this? He asked, cold. Lila set the spoon down slowly. No, she said. I think something trained you. Grant stared out the window, city light reflecting in his eyes like a storm behind glass. My mother died when I was 8, he said. The words fell without drama, no performance, just fact. Ovarian cancer, he continued. By the time they found it, it was everywhere. Lila didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't interrupt. She'd learned that fragile honesty disappears if you reach for it too quickly. Grant's voice tightened. 2 years of hospitals. I learned how to read morphine dosages before I learned long division. I learned how to be the man of the house while I still slept with a nightlight. Lila's throat closed, but she kept her face steady. My father, Grant said, and the bitterness there was old, worn smooth by repetition, couldn't handle weakness, so he worshipped strength. He made grief into discipline. He made love into something you earn. He turned his head slightly, eyes unguarded for the first time since the cathedral. When she was gone, I promised myself I'd never let anyone matter enough to destroy me, he said quietly. Sienna was safe, beautiful, easy. I kept her at a distance and called it passion. Lila swallowed. And me. Grant's gaze held hers. You terrified me. The honesty punched the air out of her. She waited, because she didn't trust herself to speak. You weren't impressed, he continued, voice low. You didn't flirt. You didn't chase. You looked at me like you could see the cracks under everything I built. His hands flexed against the blanket. And the more you pushed back, the more I wanted you to matter. Lila reached out before she could think. Her fingers wrapped around his hand. Warm, trembling, human. You were broken, she said softly. But you're not finished. Grant looked down at their joined hands like he didn't recognize the concept. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Lila's thumb stroked his knuckles once. Small, deliberate. Maybe not, she said. But you have me anyway. The doorbell rang. They both flinched, startled back into the world. Lila stood, went to the door, and returned holding a bouquet wrapped in brown paper. White tulips? Simple. Clean. Not funeral lilies. Not wedding showpieces. There's no name, she said, voice catching. Grant cleared his throat. They're from me. Lila froze. You sent these? He looked almost uncomfortable, like vulnerability was a language he'd forgotten. It felt overdue, he muttered. A card was tucked into the flowers. Grant's handwriting was sharp, careful, as if he'd rewritten the words 10 times. For the woman who stayed when she didn't have to. For the woman who saw me when I couldn't stand myself. This is only the beginning. Lila's breath hitched. She crossed the room slowly and sat on the edge of his bed. Her fingers touched his forehead first, hesitant. Then she pressed a kiss there. Gentle, steady, lingering a second longer than necessary. Grant's eyes closed. That meant more than you know, Lila whispered. His mouth curved into something small and real. Then maybe I'm learning. That evening, they ended up side by side on the couch, a forgotten movie flickering soundlessly. Lila told a story about her first job at a diner, how she'd once dumped soda on a city councilman who grabbed her waist like he owned it. Her hands moved as she talked. Her laugh filled the room with a warmth that didn't ask permission. Grant laughed, then stopped. Because in that moment, she looked alive in a way he hadn't seen in anyone close to him in years. Not dutiful, not careful, alive. And for the first time, he didn't see her as an arrangement. He saw her as the woman who had kept his body alive and was quietly stealing the parts of him that were still capable of feeling. He didn't say it. He couldn't, but something in him shifted. Later that night, Grant woke restless and maneuvered himself toward the kitchen with his cane, moving like a man negotiating with gravity. The apartment was dim, city light painting silver lines across the floor. Lila was already there, barefoot, wrapped in an oversized sweater, kettle hissing softly on the stove. You're up, she said, surprised. Couldn't sleep. Grant leaned on the counter, voice rough. Mind if I sit? Lila hesitated only a heartbeat. Of course. They sat on the couch with tea steaming between them, silence humming with things neither had dared to say for months. Grant stared at the mug as if it contained an answer. About earlier, he began. Lila's fingers tightened on her cup. Grant, no, he said, gently but firmly. Let me. He exhaled hard. I didn't mean to invade your privacy. I wasn't watching. He swallowed. I saw you, and it didn't leave my head. Lila stared at the tea, cheeks warming despite herself. I don't want you to think I'm that kind of man, he added. Words coming too fast now, fear behind them. I'm not. Lila lifted her gaze slowly. I didn't think that. Grant's eyes locked on hers. It's just, since the wedding I kept you in a category. Wife, contract, problem. And tonight, I saw you. Not a role. Not a duty. You. Her breath caught. Then Lila whispered, barely audible. And I liked it. Grant's breath broke like he'd been punched. It was the first time I felt like you were looking at me as a woman, she said, voice shaking but steady. Not as someone you were forced to tolerate. Grant's hand lifted, slow, asking permission without words. His fingers brushed her jaw. Lila didn't pull away. His thumb grazed her cheekbone like he was afraid she'd shatter. Not even in my worst dreams, he whispered. Did I imagine I'd want you like this? Lila's lips parted. No words came. Grant leaned in. The kiss started cautious, an almost kiss, then turned warm, unsteady, real. When he pulled back, their foreheads touched, both breathing hard. Lila closed the distance again herself, answering him with a kiss that wasn't duty, wasn't survival, just want. The tea cooled untouched on the table. The city kept shining, and the rest of the night blurred into quiet, whispered promises, and the kind of closeness that didn't need explanation. Morning came softly. Pale light crept through the curtains. Lila woke to Grant's arm draped over her waist, his breathing steady against her hair. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she remembered. Heat flooded her face. She turned slightly and found Grant already awake, watching her like he couldn't believe she was still there. This was real, Lila whispered, voice cracking. Grant's mouth curved into a disbelieving smile. Yes, he said, and it's the most honest thing I've ever had. Lila laughed softly, nervous, almost giddy. Sienna would never believe you. Grant's eyes darkened, not with anger, with decision. Forget Sienna, he said quietly. Forget the version of me that needed her. Lila searched his face for armor. There wasn't any. Last night wasn't just passion, Grant said, the word careful. It was love. Lila's heart stuttered. She looked at him like she was waiting for the trap to spring, but Grant's gaze held only vulnerability. I don't feel empty when you're near me, he whispered. You make the silence stop. Something inside Lila softened in a way she'd never allowed before. After that, they became imperfectly together. Breakfast in the kitchen, fingers brushing in passing, Grant's sarcasm turning into teasing instead of cruelty, Lila's smile coming easier, the penthouse becoming less like a stage and more like a place where two people might actually live. 3 months later, Grant woke at dawn and reached across the bed, searching for warmth. The sheets were empty. He frowned, listened, and then he heard it. The harsh sound of vomiting from the bathroom. Grant's chest tightened. He forgot his cane and moved too fast, pain flaring, but he didn't stop. He found Lila hunched over the sink, hair loose, face pale. Lila, he said softly, are you okay? She wiped her mouth, forcing a smile that didn't land. I'm fine. Something I ate. Maybe the pizza. Grant studied her the way he studied symptoms. His eyes narrowed. How long? He asked carefully. Has it been since your last period? Lila blinked, thrown. Maybe 3 months, she said, shrugging awkwardly. But my cycle's always been weird. Stress. Grant's face shifted. First confusion, then dawning certainty. Then a grin broke across his face so bright it startled her. Why are you smiling like that? Lila demanded, half terrified, half annoyed. Grant kissed her temple, quick, reverent, and disappeared. He came back 15 minutes later, slightly out of breath, holding a pharmacy bag like it contained the future. Lila stared. Grant, no. Yes, he said, almost laughing. We're doing it. She took the test with trembling hands and vanished into the bathroom. Grant paced outside like a man waiting for a verdict, whispering please under his breath until the word lost meaning. When she emerged, she was pale, holding the stick like it might explode. I can't look, she whispered, shoving it at him. Grant's eyes dropped. The world narrowed. Then his face crumpled, joy and disbelief colliding at once. Lila, he breathed, voice breaking. We're having a baby. Lila's hand flew to her mouth. Her knees went unsteady. A laugh escaped her like a sob. Grant pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might slip out of the world. He kissed the top of her head again and again, words shaking loose. I didn't think I'd get this, he whispered. Not after what I've been, not after what I did to you. But you, Lila looked up at him, fear and happiness mixing like electricity. I don't know if I'm ready. You don't have to be, Grant said, brushing her cheeks with his thumbs as if wiping away the last of her old life. We'll be ready together. They stood in the bathroom holding each other, the test between them, and understood something neither of them had believed at the cathedral. Their story didn't begin with love. It began with a trap. And the most defiant thing they ever did was choose each other anyway. What would you have done if love started as a deal and then turned into a real family? Drop your take in the comments and tap the channel for more stories where redemption comes with a price.